This is Marketing Uncomplicated. Welcome back to Uncomplicated. Today's guest is RJon Robins. In 2009, after nursing his wife back to health from a long-term illness, RJon Robins was completely flat broke, in large part because he failed to follow his own excellent advice about how to build a sustainable business, which we're going to get into a lot of that. Pretty soon, RJon and his wife had lost their home to foreclosure, and he found himself scourging through the kitchen drawer. You know the one, for money to buy groceries. We've all been there at some point. Today's RJon is best known for being the co-founder and CEO of How to Manage Enterprises, an award-winning 8-figure business that coaches entrepreneurs and business owners through every part of their journey, from startup to multi-million-dollar operations. He also owns several other multi-7-figure businesses. It's a best-selling author and a licensed attorney. RJon lives in Miami, and when he's not working, he prefers to spend time on his boat with his wife and son. Welcome to the show, RJon. It's so good to have you.
Thank you, Sasha. I appreciate the invitation.
So I want to go back into the backstory, as we always like to, and talk about how you got to where you got to today. So take us back to 2009. What was going through your mind in those kitchen drawer moments?
What was going through my mind was, so just a little bit of background to put this in context. Yes. I had been fairly successful in my career before that.
As a lawyer, correct?
So No. I am a licensed attorney. So I went to law school. I learned all the same things in law school that everyone learns in law school about the business of running a law firm, which is nothing. I learned nothing in law school about marketing legal services, selling legal services, systematizing the efficient production of legal services. I learned nothing in law school about financial controls, financial projections, understanding how to read a set of financials. I learned nothing in law school about learning how to hire, train, manage, make a profit with staff. None of that. I had my own law firm. It was not very successful. I discovered that the Florida bar had a program called the Law Office Management Assistance Service. I'm going fast so we can get through this stuff. And I called for help, and I ended up, long story short, I called for help so many times that they eventually ended up offering me a job. And I became the only lawyer in the state of Florida to work as a small law firm management advisor with the Florida Bar's Law Office Management Assistance Service, where I got the opportunity over the next 4 years to work with literally 9,000. We calculated 9,000. When I was at the Florida Bar calculated that my department, which was me and 2 other people, worked with over 9,000 people.
Wow.
Lawyers on every aspect of starting, marketing, managing, selling, you name it, a law firm. And then I graduated from the Florida Bar, really. And then bounced around, did some consulting, blah, 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 started the business that is now How to Manage a Small Law Firm. But when I first started it, I had failed to follow my own advice about creating a business. I had fallen into the trap of just creating a job.
I love that.
I didn't have a business that could work without me being there, right? So when my wife got sick, she was very ill for 18 months. She's fully recovered now. But when she got sick, everything fell apart really fast, right? People don't know how fast your financial life can fall apart if you don't take care. Anyway, so that's when we went broke. So that's when I'm scrounging through the kitchen drawers looking for money to buy groceries. That was literally, that's not an exaggeration. And what was I thinking back then? That's what you want to know was going through my mind? A lot of really good excuses. I had a ton of excuses. I had the best excuses. I had like a catalog of excuses, right? Track 1, excuse. Track 2, a different excuse. Problem, I had an excuse for everything, right? I was the hero. I was the victim. I was this great guy who was doing these great things, and it wasn't my fault, and it was out of my control, and it was all someone else's responsibility. And if that one hadn't done this, and if that one had promised and done that, I wouldn't be in this situation. That's what was going through my mind, with lots and lots and lots of really good excuses, which I had done a really good job of selling to everyone in my life.
Wild.
You want to know that was going
Yeah,
through my
yeah.
mind.
I mean, that's just it's incredible. And, obviously I want to get into, what you've learned from that, because I think mindset plays like a huge role in terms of how you move from that. But, let's dig into a little bit more of, you said you didn't follow your own great advice. And I love the fact that you mentioned you didn't follow your great advice in building a business versus a job, because I think a lot of people think that they're going to go into entrepreneurship, set up a company, and really work through that process. But in essence, they've just created a job for themselves.
Yeah, so there's a great book called The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber.
Yes.
And one of the things you'll notice is I'm big on attribution. So if I read something, if I learned something, I mean, there's probably a lot of things that I say that I think I thought of, but I read somewhere else. But anyway, Michael Gerber, E-Myth Revisited. Anyone who's serious about building a real business, you owe it to yourself to read or listen to the E-Myth Revisited. The gist of it is that there's a different DNA of a real business versus the DNA of a job or a practice, right? And it's kind of like what a lot of people do is they get a kitten and they think that if they take really, really, really good care of the kitten, that the kitten will grow up and be a
Hmm.
dog. And it won't, right? A kitten will never be a dog. A kitten the kitten might not become a fully grown, mature adult cat, but it's never, no matter how hard you work, no matter how much you love it, no matter how great of a kitten it
Yeah.
is, it's never going to become a dog because it's different
Yeah.
DNA. And there's a different DNA built into a business, a sustainable business that works without you having to be there for an extended period of time versus the DNA of a job or a practice that really just leverages you as you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, totally. Last question before we move into building the eight-figure business. How did you mentally and emotionally shift from the foreclosure to launching a national tour sponsored by Microsoft and LexisNexis?
Desperation.
Yeah.
I was desperate. I was, I was, for all practical purposes. I mean, but for the grace and generosity of family and friends, I was basically homeless. I lost my house to foreclosure. I had no money in the bank. I had no credit. I had nothing. Um, I, I, I was, look, my wife's from Argentina, right? So I say this like with a lot of respect for everyone in the world. I was first world
Yeah.
broke. I wasn't third world broke,
Yes.
right? There's a difference between being third world broke and first world
Yes.
broke. I was first
Yeah.
world broke,
Thanks for
right?
that
Um,
clarification.
I mean, I had 4 flat tires on my car that I had to pump up with a little electric pump and put green goo in it, but I had a
Yeah.
car,
Yeah.
right? I mean, so I was broke, but let's put things in
Yeah.
perspective here, right? So it was desperate. It was just like, I, I wanted to live indoors. I wanted to have food security. I wanted to get my life back. And so one day I realized that I was at a coaching program with one of my mentors, a guy named David Nagel,
Yes.
and he had a person working with him named Steph Tuss, and I was there, and they kind of got to know me a little bit because I was the guy with all the great excuses,
Yeah.
and and one day, and I had given them a deposit to do a VIP day, and I was like on the layaway plan,
Yes.
you know, every I give them like $500 here, $700 there, $326 somewhere else, because the deal was they wouldn't reschedule. They wouldn't let me postpone it without another installment towards the
Yes.
layaway plan, right? Which was really smart. And so I was there at the event late, you know, with my excuses and Steph, and you have to just know Steph, she's like the nicest person in the world, I think, right? And she looks me right in the eye and she says, you know, we were talking about you both before, and we know why you can't come up with this money. It was
Yeah.
$15,000, right? It was only $15,000. And I'm like, why? And she looks me right in the eye and she says, you don't want it bad enough.
Mm.
And the way that I remember it going down was that I said to Steph Tuss in her face, fuck you,
Yeah.
bitch. And the way she remembers it is I didn't actually say
Yeah.
that. I think it just got caught in my
Yeah.
throat. I was so angry. I took it so personally. You don't understand. You don't know what's going on. You have no
Yeah.
idea.
Because you felt you wanted it enough. Huh.
I had a messed up mindset,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
I was going through the motions, but there's a difference between going through the motions and really being
Yeah.
committed. And so anyway, I was so broke that I didn't even have enough money to change my flight and leave, right? So I was stuck there for 3 days. And I sat there, and as I'm going through this mindset, I'm realizing, fuck me, I don't want it bad
Yeah.
enough. If I wanted it bad enough, if I wanted it like I wanted to breathe, here's all the things that I could do that I wasn't doing. Here's all the things I stopped doing that I was doing. Here's all the ways that I would do things differently that I wasn't doing, right? That was, let's put it this way. Within 6 months, we were grossing $60,000 a month. Bam, just like that. And I'm
With a
reluctant
shift in
to
the
say,
mindset.
well, it was a complete shift of the
Yeah.
mindset, right? And I'm reluctant to say like what I did and how I did it, because those details were unique to that particular circumstance and that
In your
time
life.
of the
Yeah.
world,
Yeah.
right? The important part is I took all of my excuses, I shoved them up my ass, and I just started doing the things I needed to do. I started calling people who had said no to me 10
Yeah.
times, and some of them said yes on the 11th time. I started calling people trying to do business who had told me to fuck off and asked them to reconsider, and some of them reconsidered. I called people who had fucked me over and treated me bad. And I swallowed my pride and I just pretended like I didn't know that they were disloyal assholes, and I got them to do what I needed them to do. And within 6 months, I was grossing $60,000 a month.
Incredible.
Within 24 months of that, we were over $1 million in revenue. And that was 2010. Was it 15 years later? You know, last year we had 2 separate businesses that both grossed over $10 million.
Yeah.
One business grossed $30 million. The other business grossed $28 million last year. And a whole bunch of little, 7, million, 2 million, 5 million little businesses. Not little, I mean,
Yeah.
by comparison,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And it's all because I was willing to take my excuses and shove them up my
Yeah.
ass.
And
Taige
yeah,
astuya. Take all your excuses and shove them
yeah,
up your
I
ass.
love that. And it's really that lesson that you learned from creating that you were able to multiply to inject into other businesses, correct?
So how to manage a small law
Yes.
firm is first and foremost, and this is kind of like our secret
Yes.
sauce, right? It is first and foremost a personal development business for entrepreneurs. And we do personal development for a particular niche of entrepreneur, which is the owner of a business that happens to be a law
Yeah.
firm. But it is decidedly, intentionally, unapologetically, very clearly a business that is doing personal development for entrepreneurs. Because look, there's 7 main parts of every successful business, and there's 7 main parts of every struggling business, right? Marketing, sales, production, people, physical plan, financial controls, and you,
Yeah.
right? And when we talk about it in sequential order: marketing, sales, production, people, physical plant, blah, 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 right? But it's really more like a clock face, right? Marketing, sales, production, people, physical plant, financial controls, and you were in the middle.
Mhm. Mhm.
And your mindset problems are the cause of all of your marketing problems. And your mindset problems and your mindset limitations and your self-limiting beliefs are the cause of all of your conversion problems or in
Yeah.
sales.
You're in your own way
And
most of the
the way
time.
you think,
You're
I'm
in your
sorry,
own way most of the time.
you're the only one in
Yeah.
your own
Yeah.
way. There's no one else in your
Exactly.
way. It's always
Yeah.
you. It's always me. It's me in my
Yeah.
own way, right? My all of my staffing problems, I've got over 120 something staff. All of my staffing problems all come back to me. It's a problem with my mindset, right? I'm still growing, I'm still evolving, and I still have staffing problems, and all my staffing problems trace back to me.
Hmm.
All of my financial control problems trace back to me.
Now, when you utilize this method with every single person that you onboard onto how to manage, correct? And in terms of whether that person wants to be there or not, it's the dedication that they're going to bring, and it's the mindset shift and the work that they're going to put in to grow their law firm.
So when until you said that last part of the question, I thought you were talking about my
No.
staff, because the answer is yes and
Yes.
yes, right? So we do, no one, we do a very rigorous, thorough, ruthless, extensive job of recruiting, right? We do a very, very, very extensive recruiting methodology, right? And then after we hire someone, no one gets to start in any role within this organization from janitor on up without at least 2 weeks of
Yeah.
training. And that's not true, because a janitor technically is a contractor that it doesn't
Yeah.
work for me. But you get my
Yeah.
point, right?
Yeah.
The point I'm making is, like literally, we do at least some roles don't even get to start working with clients until they've been through 8 weeks of training. We invest 2 months of training some of the higher level
Yeah.
roles. But even the lower level roles, no one does anything. The first 2 weeks on the job is just training, 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 training. That's Monday through Friday of week
Yeah.
1. Training, 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 training. That's
Second week.
2 weeks of
Yeah.
training, right? And we're teaching them the technical stuff, and we're teaching them how we do what we do, and we're teaching them our naming conventions and our filing systems and how the scanner works and blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
blah. But we're also doing a lot of training on mindset.
Yeah.
And a fair percentage of people don't make it through those 8 weeks because they don't want to grow, and they don't want to embrace the idea of 100% personal responsibility. And then, yes, of course, we do that with our clients as
Yeah.
well. It is a personal development
I
business.
love that. I love that you do that with folks that you hire, because you're not just, in essence, you're not just cultivating. And the ones that don't survive are the ones that just want a job and they want to show up 9 to 5, right? And I believe that the ones that do survive, to your point, they want to evolve, they want to grow, they want something more, and they want to push past their boundaries.
That's the idea
Yeah.
behind it.
And the same thing also with your clients.
Look, if you build a business with crappy clients, you will have a crappy business, right? If you build your castle out of shit, you're going to have a you'll have a shit
Yeah.
castle,
Yeah.
right? If you're very intentional about only, and this goes back, to marketing, right? I just jumped, but most people completely miss half the point of
Yeah.
marketing. They only think of marketing as a way to attract. They don't think of marketing as a way to protect. My marketing protects me and protects my staff, or we try,
Yes.
from people who shouldn't do business with
Yes.
us. Maybe not because they're bad people, but because they're just not the right people for us.
No, I love that. And we're going to dive into a lot of the marketing, as you and I have talked a little bit about it before. But before we do that, when you started how to manage, what did you feel was your first major win where you essentially were feeling we're onto something here?
I distinctly remember in the beginning, I was doing all of the coaching myself. And I distinctly remember having maybe 4 or 5 clients who were paying us whatever per month for coaching. And I still wasn't making enough money to get my own place. I still wasn't making enough money really to live decent.
Yeah.
And I was really getting pretty discouraged. Like, is this ever going to work? Maybe this is a bad idea, right? Maybe this is not a viable business model. And I distinctly remember coming to a realization, and I wish I could attribute the source, because I'm sure it came from something that someone said. But I remember distinctly realizing, I'm going to put my faith in those 5 clients. And what I mean by that is, I'm going to trust that these 5 clients aren't idiots. I'm going to trust that these 5 clients have good judgment and see enough value that they're willing to pay me. And if these 5 people believe enough in me and what we're doing and are getting enough value, I can find 5 more, and then that's 10. And then I remember getting to 10 and thinking, if these 10 people are getting enough value on what we're doing, because it's not just that they pay us and then they leave, they pay and they stay, right? We have a monthly recurring revenue model. And if these 10 people are paying month after 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 month, and not just paying, but showing up for the calls, giving us feedback, sharing their data, showing that they're getting results, well, then I can probably find 20. And I stopped thinking in terms of the market is this big. I don't know if you can see me. The market is this big. Am I reaching out of frame?
Yeah, it's fine because
The market
even
is-
when you're reaching out of frame, that's really the
the market is this big, right? I remember thinking, so most people think the market is this big, and if I can just capture this little teeny piece of the market, I'll be great. And that's completely the wrong way to think about marketing.
Thank you for saying that. Honestly,
in my opinion,
it's such an old school and outdated manner.
I think it was stupid
to begin with.
Back 100 years ago. It was never a good idea. It was always bad. It was always a bad way of thinking. There was never a time where that made sense. It was bad then. It's still bad now. It's a lazy person's way of thinking, right? I remember when I was on the national CLE speaking tour, that you were talking about. I was sitting with the channel partner from Microsoft, brilliant guy named Chris Seiberg, and I said, look, I'm only getting you this many new subscribers every month. And he said, listen, they were, by the way, launching a brand new product at the time. So it was like brand new. He said, look, the way we get into first gear isn't how we're going to get to second gear. And the way we're going to get our first 100 subscribers is not the way we're going to get our first 1,000 subscribers. And the way we're going to get our first 1,000 subscribers is not the way we're going to get our first 10,000 subscribers. And the way we're going to get our first 10,000 subscribers is not the way we're going to get our first 100,000 subscribers. And now you got Office 365 with who knows how many millions of subscribers. But back then we were talking hundreds, not millions, right? And the best marketing, the absolute best marketing, your podcast is all about marketing uncomplicating, right? Here's how you uncomplicate marketing. Ready? Make your first sale. That's how the best marketing in the world is making that first sale, and then making the second sale, and then making the 5th sale, and then making the 10th sale. Sales is the best marketing there is, because it's when you're talking to the prospects and you're hearing what they say and you're figuring out what their concerns are and you're understanding where they're confused and you realize where you're not making yourself clear and you understand what they want more of. That is where your marketing comes from.
It's invaluable to be listening to that.
And oh, by the way, it also gives you the revenue you need to pay for the marketing. But that's not what people want to do. Why? Because of the mindset. Because sales is uncomfortable. They think I could just throw a bunch of money at marketing and I'll never have to do sales, right? And so what they end up doing is throwing so much money at marketing, and eventually you have to have the sales conversation, right? But they just keep kicking the can down the road and avoiding the sales conversation. Do the sales first. Use what you learn doing the sales to inform the marketing. The best marketing is basically just automating the sales conversation.
Yes.
My marketing webinars are just a reenactment of my sales calls. My free report marketing is just a reenactment of my sales calls. My live speeches that my team goes out and does around the country are just reenactments of the sales calls. Everything you see in my marketing is just pieces of our sales process put in different places.
Yeah. But to get to that first sale, because we talked about strategy, tactics, message, market, and data. Let's dig into a little bit of that.
Those are the 5 things you got to focus on.
Exactly.
Strategy, tactics, message, market, data, which most people don't understand what these 5 things are to begin
Yes.
with. And they just keep throwing money at it, thinking they can go through life with
Well,
blinders on.
let's dig into that because your growth story includes 8,000% revenue growth. And I believe in this tried and true 5 system setup in terms of strategy, tactics, message, market, and data to get to that first sale. And then it's that cyclical story that keeps going back because whatever you're learning, you take back and you adjust and you optimize, and it's this continuation. So I really want to dive into this because it is super important. And to your point, most people don't put in the work, most people don't focus on this, and they just go out and they market and they spend the money and they get zero return on investment.
And I just want to say, it's not because they're lazy, it's not because they're stupid. In my experience, it's mostly because they haven't done the mindset work to get themselves ready to do the uncomfortable part.
Yes.
Marketing is fun. Marketing is
Mhm.
easy. The what comes after the marketing is where the work starts.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's dive in. Let's dive in into the methodology that you see behind where these 5 pieces of framework begin, how they evolve, and how they optimize to really create the cyclical system that you set up to go to market, learn from market, go to market, learn from market, and that push and pull on an ongoing basis.
Right. Okay. So those 5 pieces are when it comes to marketing and sales. Obviously, there's
Hmm.
production and delivery, and you have to deliver, you have to produce and deliver what you sold,
Absolutely.
right? We haven't, that's not part of those 5. But just in terms of the 5, first off, most people have no idea what strategy is. Most marketing vendors have no idea what strategy is. If you're going to interview a marketing vendor, the first thing that I would encourage you to do is ask them to tell you what they think is the difference between strategy and tactics, right? And if they can't explain the difference between strategy and tactics,
Run.
that's a
Yeah.
non-starter. Don't even stop wasting
Yeah.
your time,
Yeah.
right? Just because they can explain the difference between marketing and tactics doesn't mean you should automatically hire them. But if they can't, you definitely shouldn't
Yeah.
hire them, right? Strategy is nothing more than a theory. It's just a theory of preferences, right? I have a theory about where I would prefer to live. I have a theory that I would prefer to live near the water on the coast, or I have a theory that I would prefer to live in the mountains, right? That's a theory. It's a theory of of which outcome I think I would most prefer. Of all of the possible outcomes that I could produce, which one do I think I would most prefer? That is a strategy. It's a theory of preferred outcomes, right? So you talk about your clients, you talk about your prospects, you talk about your target market, you talk about your avatar. Of all the different messages we can put in front of them, and all the different ways we could put that message in front of them, and all the different places we could put that in front of them, what do we think they would most prefer? In other words, which do we think they will respond best to and why? That's a strategy, right? And while we're at it, we talked about a market, or and which people do we think we'd most prefer to be doing business with,
Yes. Yes.
right? All right, that's strategy. Once you got your strategy figured out, it's time to put the strategy aside and focus on the tactics. The tactics are, what do we need to do to put our theory to the test?
Hmm.
If I have a theory that I would most prefer to be living in the mountains. So right now I live in Miami, Florida on the water. I if I were to develop a theory that I think I would prefer to live in the mountains, okay, great. I have that theory. I think I would most prefer to live in the mountains, and here's why. Terrific. Now I got to get busy on tactics. How do I put that theory to the test? Well, I have to find a place to live in the mountains. I have to decide, am I going to buy it or rent it? Or am I going to camp out? Or am I going to live in an RV? There's a lot of different mountains I could be living in. Do I want to be living in the mountains in Colorado? Do I want to be living in the mountains in Maine? Do I want to be living in the mountains in South America? Which mountains do I think I want to be living in, right? Um, Tactics are how you put the theory to the test. So you got a theory on what message you think the target audience would most prefer, would respond best to. Yeah. Then you have the tactics. How are we going to put this theory to the test to find out, which now brings in data, right? And the data tells you whether your theory, whether your strategy was correct or not. So you got strategy, tactics, market, data. Oh, what I
Message.
forgot to say is message. You
Message.
got to have something to
Yes.
say, right? And I know you've been interviewing a bunch of people on the podcast recently about AI, which obviously, how can we talk about marketing without talking about AI? AI is not going to tell you what you want to say, right? You can use AI. I love AI. You could use AI to give you ideas. You can use AI to give you options. You can use AI to give you choices. You can use AI to give you inspiration, but you can't use AI to make a decision about what you want to say in your marketing. That's up to you. The day that AI can make the decision for us about what we want to say in our marketing is the day we got to take the red pill and get on the
Exit train.
Cuba. I forgot what it's called. You know what I'm talking
Yeah.
about.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. That's really, 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 really insightful. And in the sense of also when you coach businesses from startup to multi-million dollar, these tactics become basically that Bible, for a lack of a better word. But when you onboard them, I know that there's a through line with all of the thousands of companies that you've worked with. What is the most common mistake you see at each stage? Because there is a through line, I'm almost certain.
Yeah. No one's asked me that in that way, so I'm thinking about giving you an answer. I don't want to give you just some BS
Yeah.
answer. So they don't have a strategy. They don't have a real theory about what they think they themselves would like to achieve, right? Do you want to get
And I want to put a I
10
want to
new
put
clients?
a stake in that and ask you, do you even think that they know that?
Do they know that they don't have a
Yeah,
strategy?
yeah.
No, they do not know that they don't have a
Yeah.
strategy. Um, they are enamored with
Yes.
tactics. They love tactics. They think tactics are strategy, and they're
Yeah.
not. So the biggest problems that I find, and by I mean we've got a whole team of people that work with all of our members. It's not just
Hmm.
me. Um, the biggest problem that we find is they come to us with no strategy, with no understanding of strategy, just a collection of tactics. Two, they're not real clear on what their message is. They don't really know what they want to say to the market, right? Too much of their message is they see what other people are saying and they want to try to say the same
Hmm.
thing. They want to fit in instead of stand out. And the reason that they want to fit in instead of stand out becomes a mindset issue, right? Because standing out is uncomfortable. People make fun of you when you stand out. People criticize you when you stand out. People ridicule you when you
Yep.
stand out. And so rather than standing out, they want their message to kind of look like everyone else's
Yep.
message. Um, a fun test to do on anyone's website is take someone else's picture and someone else's name and put it on their website. And most of the time you can't tell the difference. They're the same. They're all saying the same thing. And then last is they're afraid of the data. More to the point, they're afraid of what the data implies, because the data usually implies that you need to do something different than what you're doing, and change is uncomfortable.
Yeah, the
So
data is really going to show
strategy,
like what's working, what's not.
the data is going to show you that the person who has been whispering sweet nothings in your ear all this time has been lying to you. The data is going to show that the person who you think is your friend, they might be your
Yeah.
friend, but they're not doing a good job. Go socialize with them. Stop paying
Yeah.
them. The data is going to show you that that brilliant idea you had didn't work, even though you really, really, really wanted it to work. I did a presentation a few years ago with our former CMO before she left. We got on stage in front of, I don't know, several hundred of our clients, and we did a whole presentation on our very best marketing ideas. And we presented the marketing ideas, and the audience was like, "That's brilliant! I love that! That's amazing!" And then we showed the data, and it was a disaster.
Yeah.
Like, this one didn't work. This one didn't work. This one didn't work. This one didn't work. And like, these are my babies. These are the best marketing ideas. These are such great marketing ideas. They're inspired. They're creative. They're brilliant. They're fun. The only problem is they didn't work.
Yeah.
The data will break your heart.
Oh, I love that. It's so true. Now, though, on the best marketing ideas, do you find that they were the most simplistic, or they were?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And of the
Yes.
ones that didn't work, were they the ones that were a little bit complicated and maybe
Yes.
traditional and not outside of the thinking outside the box?
Oh, that's definitely never
Yeah.
me.
Always thinking outside
That's
the
that's one
box.
thing I don't have a
Yeah.
problem with.
Yeah.
Um, but no, to your point, the ones that the simple marketing ideas are the ones that work
Yep.
best.
Yep.
The complicated marketing plans are the ones that don't work best. So another one of my mentors, Dan Sullivan, strategic coach, he figured out years ago that most people only read the first 25 or 50 pages of a book. So he started publishing 50-page books. And what he did is he would take his book, his 300-page brilliant book with these 5 brilliant, amazing ideas. And instead of publishing this one brilliant book with these 5 brilliant ideas, he published one book on just one idea, and a second book on just a second idea, and a third book on, you get where I'm going with
Yes.
this,
Yes.
right? Um, that kind of marketing tends to work better than the something for everyone
Yeah.
marketing.
No, I completely agree. And I love that you mention, how the data is going to break your heart and the fear of looking into it, because to your point, you had all these amazing ideas. They were your baby. This was going to work. It had to work, but it didn't. And the data told you that. And you got to take that and you move on from it. Right. And most people aren't ready to do that, going back to that mindset.
Um, they fall in love with the marketing idea.
Yeah.
They fall in love with the person who convinced them of the marketing idea. Their ego will not allow them to consider that they might have been completely wrong. Um, Maybe some people told them this isn't going to work, but now they got a point to make. They're going to prove it, right? I drove my son to school this morning, and this person it's a 2-lane road at part of the road, and there's this person driving like 20 miles an hour. And I'm like beeping the horn, beeping the horn, beeping the horn, beeping the horn, because we're gonna be late to
Yeah.
school. And the person's like not speeding up, not speeding up, not speeding up. So at the moment that I had the chance, I like hit the accelerator and like raced around the car, and I'm driving like racing down the street. And of course I get to the red light a mile later, and guess who shows up behind me,
Is the person.
30 seconds, 45 seconds later. And the whole time I'm at the red light, I'm like, please don't show up. Please don't show up. Please don't show up. Please don't show up. This is a total stranger who I don't even know who they are. They don't know who I am. I'm never going to see them again. And I'm like sitting there thinking, please don't show up. Please don't show up. Please don't show up. Please let this light turn green and let me get out of here before this person pulls up behind me and gives me that knowing fuck you glance, right? We don't want to acknowledge when we're wrong. It's a mindset problem. We all struggle with it. We all have an ego.
And even though we work on it, we still fall back on it sometimes. A lot
Even
of
though we
times.
work on it, even though we train other people how to work on it, we're human.
100%. Well, let's dive in a little bit into that in terms of mindset and frameworks. And I want to have you explain to us the doctrine of sacrifice versus the doctrine of profit and how it changes an entrepreneur's trajectory.
So the doctrine of sacrifice comes from my study of Ayn Rand, objectivism.
Yes.
And the idea is this: profit. We all want to make a profit in our business, right? I mean, have you ever interviewed a single person on your podcast who didn't want to make a profit in their
No.
business? No, of course not, right? Even nonprofits have to make a
Yeah.
profit. It's just that they convert that profit into more services instead of distributions and dividends to shareholders, right? We all have to make a profit. But what is profit? Profit is really just when you exchange something you value less for something you value more, right? So what you exchange, what you give up, what you sacrifice that you value less, it could be money, it could be time, it could be opportunity, it could be relationships, it could be anything, right? So I value my health and fitness. So I sacrifice the opportunity to sit on the couch tonight and watch TV and eat potato chips, which I very much enjoy
I think
doing.
everyone.
I make that sacrifice to go to the gym instead, right? Um, there's a million things I could be doing right now. I could be out on my boat. I could be playing with well, he's in school, but I could be doing all kinds of things right now. But I believe that being here with you will produce more value for me in the long run than whatever else I could be doing. And so I sacrifice the opportunity to do all those other things to do this instead, because I believe this is of more value to me. And in that way, I'm making a profit. So are you. So is everyone listening to this, because everyone listening to this, there's a million other things you could be doing, but you believe for whatever reason that listening to this show will be of more value to you than all the other things you could be doing. And so listening to the show is profitable for you, right? So we have to sacrifice what we value less to get what we value more. That is the essence of profit. Does this make sense? Okay. The doctrine of sacrifice has people believing that they should, and what's worse, it's based on the premise that they even could sacrifice what they value more to get what they value less, right? Because it values the sacrifice.
Yes.
Altruism is all based on the idea that sacrifice is good, period.
Yes.
Well, if you go through life believing that sacrifice is good for its own sake, and you decouple it with sacrifice to get something better, well, then that starts to produce some very perverse behavior.
Yes.
Right? Now you start making sacrifices just to make the sacrifices.
And not understanding
irrespective of whether the sacrifice does, can, should, or is even reasonably calculated to make a profit for you.
Yes.
But here's where it gets really messed
Well,
up.
before you tell me that, what is the most misunderstood piece about profit?
That it's only about money. People think that profit is just financial. There's personal profit, there's financial profit, there's professional profit, there's relationship profit, there's time profit, there's all kinds of different. Anytime you sacrifice anything that you value less to get something you value more, you're making a profit. That is the essence of profit. No two human beings on the face of the planet have ever made a voluntary exchange without both of them making a profit. Because why would you make a voluntary exchange for whatever you've got to get something else if you didn't want whatever else it is more than what you're giving up? I could force you, but then it's not voluntary. I could trick you, but then it's not voluntary. I could defraud you, but then it's not voluntary. Right? No one would voluntarily give up what they've got to get something that they want less. And so the doctrine of sacrifice is basically says that you should take pride in how much you sacrifice. You should take pride in how much you suffer. You should take pride in how much you endure. Like, I had to suffer a lot to build the business that I've got. I don't take pride in the fact that I suffered a lot. I wish that I was smarter and better and more educated and better informed and better advised and better coached, so I wouldn't have to have suffered so much.
But you take pride in the fact that you came out of that suffering and that you had the mindset to push through and not give up.
I take pride in the value that I was able to create for all the people who I created value
Through your
for.
hardship and sacrifice.
I don't take pride in the fact that it came through hardship and sacrifice. Had I known then what I know now, I would have produced more value for more people and made more people's lives better faster, including my own, without so much suffering and without so much sacrifice and without so much hardship.
Going back to the concept, if you actually listen to yourself.
I just didn't know what I didn't
Yeah.
know. You know, I'll be 54 years old this year. You know, when I was 44, I didn't know what I know at 54.
Yeah.
When I was 34, I didn't know what at 44, right? Had I known then what I know now, I could have created the business that I've got now without so much hardship, without so much sacrifice, without it being so hard. And that is essentially why smart, rational, self-respecting people hire professionals to help them, right? Because you say, I don't want to learn this the hard way. I don't want to make all of the avoidable mistakes. I want to leverage that person's skills, that person's experience, that person's training, that person's know-how, so I can take a nice shortcut around all the suffering and sacrifice that I can. Why would anyone want to make it harder on themselves than they have to? Here's the answer. Because they've bought into the doctrine of sacrifice. The doctrine of sacrifice has you thinking that there's some pride to be gotten from the fact that you found the hard way to do it instead of found the easy way to do it.
So let me ask you this, with all of these, ridiculous trends that tend to happen across social media, when that whole thing was that, do hard shit to like get to a successful place, right?
Be willing to do hard shit. See, it's be willing to do the hard shit. Be willing to suffer. Be willing to work your ass off. Be willing to do the hard hours. To be willing to crawl through the broken glass on your stomach. Be willing to do whatever it takes. But fuck, if there's a better way, don't fucking abuse yourself just to punish yourself. Do the better way. Do the easier way. There's a difference between being willing to do the hard shit versus I'm going to try to find hard shit to do for the sake of doing hard shit.
And that's what happens with the general public, is they take the latter because they think that that's what that information is feeding to them.
Well, because they're trying to base their whole education on 30-second freaking Instagram clips. And, I'm sorry, but I can't tell you everything you need to know in a 45-second Instagram clip. You're going to have to sit down and read a book. You're going to have to sit down and go to a course, have an actual conversation. You're not going to get everything you need to know in 30-second clips.
Yeah. Thank you. That's the world that most people live in.
But this is fantastic. This is both fantastic and heartbreaking, right? It's heartbreaking when I have to sit there and talk to another multi-million, $10 million business owner and break the news to them. We aren't that great. We're not as great as we think we are. We're mostly winning by default. Most of the reasons we're winning is because most people just won't do what needs to get done. It's not because we're so great. It's because they're doing so little. Now that's heartbreaking, right? Takes all the pride out of our accomplishments. On the other hand, it's very encouraging because it means it's not that hard to build a multi-million-dollar business. You just have to be willing to do the things that most people aren't willing to do. It's not that hard.
Let's talk a little bit about, and I appreciate.
As you say, it's not that complicated.
Yes, thank you.
It's not that complicated.
Thank you.
Sometimes it's very hard. Sometimes it's heartbreaking, but it's not complicated.
But what about the fear in somebody, which is also a mind shift of getting to that point? It's the fear of, am I good enough? Am I worthy to get to this point? Because I do believe that a lot of that plays a huge role into somebody pushing past those boundaries. I think fear is huge in that.
So I have a really great lesson that I'd like to share with you to put in the show notes, where I explain and diagram out where imposter syndrome comes
Yep.
from and how to extract yourself, liberate yourself, free yourself from imposter syndrome. But it's a longer conversation than we've got time for. And to be completely candid, I wasn't expecting to have that conversation, and I don't have it like top of
Yeah.
mind to spit
Yeah.
out right
Yeah.
now. So let me share that with you to share with your
Yeah.
audience.
Perfect. I love that. Thank
Okay.
you. And maybe that's a
But
part two
I
of
will
bringing
say
you back
this.
on.
Okay. But I will say this. Um, the number one red flag that we've got in our business that we know that we got to be on the lookout for someone that someone's getting ready to implode their business and start doing some real self-destructive
Yeah.
stuff is when they get a new car. And it's not just that they get a new car, it's that they get a new and better version of a
Yeah.
car, right? If they go from a BMW to a BMW, it's not a problem. If they go from a Chevrolet to a Chevrolet, it's not a problem. If they go from a Kia to a Kia, it's not a problem. It's when they go from the Kia to the Mercedes that we know we got a problem, right? Because we live in a society, whether we like it or not, and but we do. We live in a society where cars are like jewelry, right? We judge each other by the cars we drive,
For
right?
everything
I do
that's being
too. We
worn
all
on our
do.
sleeve. Yeah.
Anyone who claims they
Yeah.
don't, you're not. I don't think being honest with
Yeah.
yourself. We judge people by the cars they drive, right? Um, and so we get people all the time, and we pay off all their student debt. We pay off all of their personal debt. We max out all of their 401ks and all their IRAs. I mean, their entire financial life is like materially better.
Yeah.
And what all of those things have in common is they're invisible. Their friends, their family, their neighbors, they can't see it, right? You roll up in a brand new Mercedes when everyone that you know is driving around in a Honda, they're going to see that, and they're going to have something to say about it. And you know what they're going to say about it because you were in that group talking shit about all the Mercedes drivers not that long ago, right? And by the way, this is not a Honda or Mercedes thing, because all the people that are driving the Mercedes, they're talking shit about all the people driving the Bentleys. And all the people with the Bentleys are talking shit about all the people driving the Ferraris. Every group has a set of rules that they agree to. This is how it should be. This is how it shouldn't be. This is what's acceptable. This isn't what's acceptable, right? And as long as you stay within the range of what's acceptable and not acceptable, you're part of this group and we're all
Yeah.
good. You go too far above, you fall too far below, you get ejected from the group. And it's really painful when you get ejected from the group. So most people are more afraid of success than they are afraid of failure, because failure, you find lots of friends when you're failure. Everyone wants to get together and workshop their excuses when they're failing.
Yeah.
Right? Let's get together and come up with reasons why it's the economy's fault and not our fault. Let's get together and find out and get reasons why it's that vendor's fault and not our fault. Let's get together. I got a group of former members of How to Manage Small Law Firm who have literally created their own little community dedicated to explaining why it's all my fault or all How to Manage's fault, why they're not successful. They can't explain why everyone else is so successful, but that they workshop this shit, right? It's easy to find friends. It's easy to find people who will welcome you into their community when you are failing. It's not so easy to find people, it's not so easy to find friends when you have success. Particularly because on that first part of the journey from struggling financially to financially very successful, right?
Yeah.
All your friends and family who bought into all your bullshit excuses are confused. Remember I told you in the beginning, you asked me what I was thinking, what was on my mind when I was going through the drawer, and I said what was going through my mind was all of my excuses, and I was perfecting them and crafting them and improving them. I also mentioned to you that I had to sell those excuses to my friends and family, including my wife.
And to yourself.
Right? Well, on some level, I knew it was bullshit. Well, imagine the conversation when I had to go to my wife and say, hey, guess what? Turns out that everything that I've been telling you and everything that I've been selling you on, everything that I convinced you about why we have to live this way and why we can't live that way, it's all bullshit. That wasn't a fun conversation, right? And then you get together with all your friends and like, okay, everyone, today's topic is we're going to talk about why it's interest rates that keep us all down. Let's now figure out how to blame the interest rates. And you go in there and you're like, I just doubled my income. Oh, how did you double your income? I thought we all agreed that the rule was we can't double our income because of interest rates. Last month, we got together and we decided that the reason our income can't grow is because of those people across the street. And you broke the rules.
Yeah.
And they eject you from the group. Because either they're going to open their eyes and be inspired and encouraged and say, wow, you did it. We can do it. Let's all go do it. And let's turn our back on all these excuses we've all been making. Or you got to leave the group because you're not following the rules around here anymore. Now, you don't instantly get accepted by the people who have what you want, right? Because they're a little skeptical because they know you've been talking shit for all that time, right? They've seen you talking shit about them. They've heard you talking shit about them. And if they haven't seen or heard you, they know your friends and people like you have been talking shit about them for all this time. And they're not really sure you're committed to this new way of living. It's kind of like moving into a new neighborhood and everyone's nice, but they're not really sure if you're there to stay, right? And you get there and you stay there and you stay there and you stay there and you stay there. And eventually they kind of warm up to you. So there's that lonely time in the middle where it's like it's the dark night of the soul for a while, where you are on your own, and the only thing you got guiding you is your own vision of the life you want. If you're lucky, like I am, my wife was there with me. Sometimes her leading me, sometimes me leading her, sometimes us side by side. And if you're really lucky, you got one person at least with you along the way.
Either one person, or to your point, when you've talked about some of the mentors and the coaches that you've had in your life. I mean, it takes a village to really move along this journey.
Look, you walk into one of our live quarterly meetings, right? The last live quarterly meeting, I think we had 700 people in the room.
That's a village.
You walk into one of our live quarterly meetings and you see there's a session of the live quarterly meeting where everyone stands up, goes to the microphone and celebrates their biggest successes for the last 90 days since the last live quarterly meeting, right? And that session is usually about 45 minutes and it starts with a long line to the back of the room and it ends with a long line to the back of the room, and we never get through everyone. And it's not financial successes. I mean, some of them are financial, but a lot of them are personal successes, right? I was finally able to take my kids to school every day for a month. I was finally able to get home to dinner 4 out of 5 nights of the week. I was finally able to go to my kids, after school activities, things like that. I mean, a lot of personal stuff. Some of them, a woman last quarter, she stood up and said she was able to be at her father's side for the last month of his life without having to worry about what was going on in the business, right? So he didn't have to carry that weight that my daughter is sacrificing financially to be here for me. I mean, it was a beautiful moment. Everyone was in tears. The point I'm making is you walk into this room and all of a sudden, all those excuses you've been working on, they don't work anymore. Because there's people who are the same age as you. There's people who are the same race as you. There's people who are the same religion as you. There's people who are from the same part of the country as you. There's people who express their love the same way you do. And you're like, everywhere you turn, there's someone having success who undermine all your excuses. At which point you either quit and say, we're all a bunch of fucking idiots or liars or assholes or whatever, or you embrace it and you're like, oh my God. And then your income doubles.
Yeah. I love that. I love that.
You should come to the next one.
Yeah, totally. I love that you say 700 people in a room and all your excuses just have to disappear, and
They don't fit
they
in that
don't
room.
fit in that room. And it's the energy that you guys bring to that room, that support, they don't fit in that room anymore.
In January, every January, we have a ceremony where we celebrate everyone who broke the 7-figure barrier or broke the 8-figure barrier for the first time in their
Yeah.
career. And we give the people who broke the 7-figure barrier, we give them a small sledgehammer. And the people who break the 8-figure barrier, we give them a big sledgehammer.
Yeah.
We call it the hammer ceremony. Yeah. And we used to, when we first started, we would do the hammer ceremony on Saturday night, and then we would do some other stuff. Now we can only do the hammer ceremony because we got like 40, 50 people every January who had broken the 7-figure barrier or broken the 8-figure barrier for the first time in their career. How do you watch Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, gay, straight, old, young, on wheelchairs? How do you watch all of these people going across the stage, breaking the 7-figure barrier, breaking the 8-figure barrier, and sit there and say you can't do it? Yeah. You can say you don't want to do it. You can say you don't want it bad enough. Remember that? But you can't say you can't do it.
Yeah. No, I mean that's truly inspiring. I mean, it sounds so cliche, but I mean the fact that we're really breaking down that barrier to know that somebody can get to that point, and it's really that mindset shift, which is so important. So I mean, so many good nuggets in this call.
And then there's a lot of work.
Yes.
I
Yeah,
want to
yes,
be clear.
yes.
It's not like you
It's
have this
not easy.
mindset shift
Yeah.
and that's
No.
just happens. I mean, you gotta get serious about your
For
marketing
sure.
strategy, get serious about your marketing tactics, get serious about your marketing implementation,
You
get
have to
serious
own
about
it.
looking at your
Yeah.
marketing
Yeah.
data, get serious on I mean, this is a podcast about marketing, so I want to emphasize there's a lot of work that goes into
Yes.
implementing the mindset.
Yes.
But the mindset, it's stopping you from doing the things that you can do.
100%. 100%. Yeah. Well, I want to dive in a little bit into, lessons and advice, and the fact that, you've done an incredible job in launching instantly profitable ventures. What's the process for validating an idea?
I've also done a very good job of losing a
Yes,
ton of
yes.
money on a bunch of things that didn't work. I just want to be
Yes.
clear. I don't have the Midas
But
touch.
you've celebrated the successes of that, and that is also important because you've taken lessons from that, of the ones that have failed. And even
Right.
yes, and even the fact that you guys stand up in front of, your customers, and you say, these were ideas that we put out there and we really believed in them and we wanted them to succeed, but they failed. And I think that that's truly important, and that takes with it. But what I want to know is, what do you find, or what's your process for validating an idea before investing heavily into that, whether you know that it's going to fail or whether you know it's going to succeed, because you got to try.
Well, first of all, I never invest heavily in
Yeah.
anything. That's the methodology. I never invest heavily in anything. That way that way I can take all kinds of
Yes.
risks. I invest a little bit. It has to work. And then I double down and invest a little bit more, and then it works
Yeah.
more. And then I just keep reinvesting. I never invest heavily in anything. I test my way and
Dip in slowly to build upon the momentum.
everything's a
Yes.
test, right? Everything's always a test. But to your point, I know that's not the question you're really asking me, so I'll answer the question that I think you really want. What's the strategy? What outcome do we think this is going to produce? Is this an outcome we want? Why is this the outcome we want? What about this outcome do we want? And why do we want it? Right? All right. Then we make a financial model.
Yes.
Right? What do we think the cost of goods sold are going to be? What do we think is going to cost us if this thing works as well as we hope it will work? What do we think it will cost to deliver the service? Right? It might cost us more than that in the beginning as we're achieving scale. But if this thing gets up and going, what do we think the cost to deliver the service will be? What do we think the cost of goods sold will be? Right? And then we got to figure out what what the retail price has to be to support that cost of goods sold, right? If it costs $1 to deliver a cup of coffee, right? I can't sell the cup of coffee for $1. I got to sell the cup of coffee for more than $1, right? So let's say I figure it's going to cost $1 to deliver the cup of coffee. My cost of goods sold will be $1. That's the cost of the cup. That's the cost of the coffee. That's the cost of the sleeve. That's the cost of the labor to produce that incremental cup of coffee. Then I've got operating expenses. I got static operating expenses. I got dynamic operating expenses. Static overhead, dynamic overhead. I figure that all out. I kind of guesstimate that stuff. And I figure, okay, to make this work and give me at least a 25% profit, I'm going to have to sell this cup of coffee for $3. That's my model. All on a whiteboard. On a whiteboard, maybe an Excel spreadsheet, but mostly it's on a whiteboard, right? Well, let's see if we can sell a cup of coffee for $3. Let's see if we can sell one single cup of coffee for $3. If I can't sell one single cup of coffee for $3, I don't need to start this business. Okay, I sold one cup of coffee for $3. Let's see if I can sell a second cup of coffee for $3. Let's see if I can sell a third cup of coffee for $3. Okay, now I've sold a bunch of cup of coffee for $3, and I talk to the people who bought it, and I say, why'd you buy the cup of coffee? What did the cup of coffee do for you? What would you like this cup of coffee to have to make it even more valuable to you? I take all that, and then I say, okay, can I create a marketing? Remember I said sales comes first? Then I create some kind of marketing idea to say, okay, can I take all the stuff that they gave me, all the feedback they gave me, and turn it into something and let the marketing thing sell 2 or 3 or 10 or 20 cups of coffee for $3? Okay, great. Now I've got a machine. Now I've got a marketing thing that sells my cups of coffee for $3. My cost of goods sold on the cup of coffee is working its way down to $1 as I get to scale. And I'm paying attention to my static overhead and I'm paying attention to my dynamic overhead and watching to make sure that I'm getting closer and closer to that 25% target profit margin. And maybe it's 30%, maybe it's 20%. It depends on the business, right? And like literally, it's that simple. I've launched two separate multi 8-figure businesses exactly doing what I just told you. I've launched multiple multi 7-figure businesses doing exactly what I just told you. And we've helped, hundreds and hundreds. We've probably helped over thousands of law firms at this point. And this is your podcast is Marketing Uncomplicated. This is business growing uncomplicated. This is it. That's how it's done. Now, people don't want it to be that simple. People want it to be complicated. Because if it's complicated, then they got a good reason for why they don't do it. But I'm sorry to tell you, if you're looking for a reason to make it complicated so you can avoid doing it, I'm sorry to tell you it's not that complicated. Just do what I told you to do.
Yeah. I do want to thank you for that. I do want to take a step back in terms of what you said, that you don't invest heavily, because I think it's important. And thank you for emphasizing on that. It's the testing and the testing and testing. So let's just dive into that, because I do think it is extremely important that you don't put all your eggs in one basket and invest, and so you can take the risk. And it's the testing and learning and the continuation, which just goes back to everything that you just said.
Yeah, because I don't know what's going to work.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going to work. And anyone who tells you they know what's going to work, they're wrong. Beware of anyone who tells you they know what's going to work.
It's similar to like marketing.
Now, I can tell you some things that I think aren't going to work, and I can tell you here's why it's not going to work, and here's the scar that shows you why. Last time I tried this, here's the scar I got, and here's the scar I got the other time, and most of my scars are inside and you can't see. But I can tell you why I think it might not work. I can tell you it didn't work the last 20 times I tried it. But you show me 2 marketing campaigns, like the only way that I know which one's going to work better is by testing both of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's dive into a few things in terms of, one belief about business success you've completely changed your mind about over the last couple of years?
I'm sorry. What
From
what is
from
the
from
question?
lessons of, where you've come from and the growth and the build out and, all the shifting and the mindset and, the lessons, the things that succeeded, the things that didn't succeed. What's one belief about business success you've completely changed your mind about over the years?
That the smartest people necessarily have the best advantage. And very often, the smartest, most capable people actually, that's a disadvantage, is an impediment to building a successful
Yeah.
business. Um, because for one reason, if you're really smart and really creative, you got lots of opportunities and lots of options and lots of ideas, which are all distractions. They distract you from just focusing on one thing. Sometimes if you if you're not that smart and you're not that creative and you only have one choice, you don't waste your time looking for other options. You just get busy making that one
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Second thing, uh, really smart people. Um, most of us, I'm fairly smart. Most of us um, are used to things being easy
Yeah.
because if you're smart, you figure things out and things are relatively easy. And so when we try something new, particularly if it's uncomfortable, it's not easy. And smart people don't always have the grit, the stick-to-itiveness, right? Because they're not used to having to figure shit
Hmm.
out that isn't easy. And last and not least is ego. Um, very smart people, particularly if they grow up in a certain socioeconomic
Yeah.
class, went to school with people who have a level of success, right? And when I was working at the Florida Bar Law Office Management Assistance Service, I was making $35,000 a year. I mean, this was 1999, but all my friends that I went to law school with were making 75, 100, $125,000 a year. They were living much better than me. I was like the loser, right? But I was paying my
Yeah.
dues. When Allie and I went broke, you know, it would have been so easy for me to just dust off my resume and go get a job and make 100 or $200,000 a year. All my friends were making 100 or $200,000 a year. My family couldn't understand why I wouldn't just dust off my resume and go get a good job. Because when you're smart, you have those choices, you have those options, right? You can aim for and hit the
Yeah.
middle. The problem is when you aim for and hit the middle, you don't get to the
Yeah.
top. I mean, my income, I'm I've more than made up for it.
Yeah.
But there were years when I looked like the big loser. I would go to family get-togethers and I was always the underdog. Oh, yeah, that RJon, he's so smart. One day he'll finally get his shit together. Well, I was in the process of getting my shit together. They just didn't
Yeah.
see it because what the results, there's a lag between when you get your shit together and start taking the right actions and when the results show up.
Yeah.
And it's no fun when you're sitting there at the family gathering and everyone's talking about poor you. One day they'll get their shit together and you're like, motherfucker, I am getting my
Yeah.
shit together. The results just haven't shown
Yeah.
up yet.
Yeah. It's like that that cliche image that everybody sees, which is the top of the iceberg, but they don't see everything that's below the ocean, right? And all the work that
Right.
has to be done to get to the tip of the iceberg, to get to the top of the mountain,
Yeah.
not the tip of the iceberg. Yeah.
Right. And the thing is, we live in a culture, you talked about social media
Yeah.
earlier. We live in a culture where everyone thinks that everything's an overnight success,
Yeah.
right? We live in a culture, we live in like the montage culture, right? We all, I mean, I grew up in the 80s, so I remember all those movies where it's like
The best movies in
there's
the 80s.
there's the problem, and then there's that montage scene
Mm-hmm.
where next thing you know, they're riding on a
Mm-hmm.
rocket ship that they built out of paper clips and scotch tape
Yeah.
while locked up by the bad guys. But it's the montage scene, right? And everyone expects things to happen
Yeah.
fast, right? And I remember going to those family functions. I remember my mentor, one of my mentors, David Nagel, saying the same story that he experienced. And sure enough, it ended up being the same experience that I experienced, where you go to a family function and people hear that you're coaching with this new person, or they hear you just got back from a new workshop or something like that, or you just join a new group or whatever. And they're like, "Oh, so are you a millionaire yet?" It's like, no, you fucking
Yeah.
idiot. It takes
Yeah.
time. Of course not. It's not
Yeah.
instant, right? But
I love that. I love that you say everybody expects things to happen fast, because it goes back and it relates to marketing, which is the buildup of your company, right? It's the buildup of the product and the service that you're building. And all of a sudden they think just because I hit play, the floodgates are going to open. And that's not what happens.
and then they fire their marketing vendor before their marketing
Can
vendor even
even
has a
chance
chance
to
to get
start.
any
Yes.
data to make a smart
Yeah.
decision with.
Or even hit a sale, right? To then go back on
Like,
that
it
loop.
didn't work. What do you mean it didn't work?
That's
It's
when the work
working.
starts.
It's working.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
happening, right? We got to gather data. We got to do some tests. We got to refine. We got to figure out. The problem is, and this is on the marketing vendors. If there's any marketing vendors listening to this, the problem is they
They're
don't
not doing the
set
diligence to educate.
proper
Yep.
expectations. They don't educate their client.
Yes. Thank you. Absolutely. Arjun, this has been not just informative, it has been incredible to dive into all of the advice and the tools that you are sharing that you have utilized within your own toolbox to get to where you are in life. So we really appreciate all that insight, and some of the tactics that are your tried and true and tested secrets that you have developed to build out to where you are. We've listed everything below in terms of how to get in touch with you, but before we let you go, we like to do one thing, which is a rapid fire, one word, one habit, one myth. So you ready? All right, fired up.
Now I'm ready.
One word that describes the entrepreneurial mindset you value most.
Truth.
Love it. One habit that has the highest ROI in your business life.
Getting back up again when I get knocked down.
Because you are going to get knocked down. One myth about building a profitable business you wish would disappear forever.
The idea that there's one big thing.
That you have to chase.
The idea that there's this one big grand gesture. I'm just going to do this one
Yeah.
thing and it's going to
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Right? I'm just going to have this one idea and it's going to work. I'm just going to invent this one thing and it's going to work. It's lots and lots and lots of little things, little things, little things, little things, little things, little things.
To
That's
get
how you
there.
build it.
Yeah. Amazing. I love it. Thank you, Arjun. This has been incredible. We really appreciate your time.
I appreciate the invitation.
Thank
Thank you.
you.